We got the matchup we were expecting. Two teams we know pretty well with established stars. And yet something felt a little lacking Monday night. Maybe it was the 9:20 Eastern start time. Maybe everyone's a little sleepy. I know Isaac Schade from Locked On College Basketball was not sleepy, but Isaac, did you feel? I saw a lot of mentions on social media from people who are like, you know, this kind of doesn't have the same juice that we got on Sunday night in the women's final.
Sunday night, that was Sunday afternoon. We got to get a little compromise here. Can we?
Yeah.
No,
right.
Peter, it didn't. And it's a story because of a storyline that you and I talked about earlier this college basketball season. Right now, what we have in the women's game is the names and the stars. And that's why that game on Sunday did a 18 point whatever number that it did. Yeah. Because you've got Caitlin Clark and Juju Watkins and Angel Reese and Paige Beckers and on and on and on. And in the men's side, for me, who covers it all the time, yeah, there's a bunch of names and I love them, but they do not have right now the same level of household cachet that the women's does. And so I just think that's part of it. That's part of the luster of it. But you even think about the modernization of college basketball, Peter, of basketball in general, I guess I should say. This game, UConn, Purdue combined, I'm looking at the numbers right now. Shot a combined 7 of 29 from three. Yeah, I think, you know, there's just things like that play into it where it's just like, you know, the highlight of this game was a putback dunk from a white dude that's 2 inches taller than me. Right? And so it's just like, I just don't think we get some of those moments where it's just like, oh, UConn's just doing what they're doing at a ridiculously unprecedented level, because they're just a really stinking good basketball team. But it's nothing that we're like, oh boy, that was infectious. And I loved it Monday because I thought it was a great basketball game, but it's not what brings in Johnny Q basketball fan.
Yeah. And look, Connecticut was a death machine all season. Like they are just, and the phrase that I used was relentless. That's what they are on both ends. And that, you know, for the product, that's not always the best thing. Let's flip this to talk about Purdue, because Zach Edey puts an exclamation point on his career, at least in the stat line. They come up short as a team, but just as we talked about the other day with Caitlin Clark, you win as a team. You do the individual, you know, the scoring and the rebounding. That's what you do individually. How are you going to remember this period of Purdue basketball?
As a phenomenal period of Purdue basketball. Look, for me, like, sure, they fell 16 points shy of pulling a Virginia, basically, right? Like Virginia, who lost UMBC 2018, came back to win the national championship. Purdue fell just shy of that. But I think, you know, I know we're not here to get into a rings culture conversation, but we need to celebrate Final Fours, right? Like that needs to be a thing in the college game. And so for me, I'm going to remember Zach Edey as the guy that got Matt Painter to the Final Four for the first time. I saw a quote from Zach Edey from the post-game press conference from just a little bit ago. I've always said, quote, Matt Painter is someone who gave me a chance. I've been trying for 4 years to pay him back for that, end quote. And Peter, that's the thing for me, is that not only has he paid him back tenfold that, but college basketball has given everything to Zach Edey, and what a run and a ride it's been for this guy who becomes the first back-to-back National Player of the Year since some dude named Ralph freaking Sampson from Virginia way back when. And so I'm going to remember this era of Purdue basketball very well. Thank you very much. The question now is, can they find a way to prolong it and extend it in the same way that UConn is kind of building a programmatic identity right now?
Yeah, and it is all taking place in a changing landscape. These teams able to figure out how to make this work. I'm going to throw this at you because this was something that we talked about earlier in the show. Do you think other teams need to change the way that they handle recruiting, the way that they handle team composition? Because we just saw two teams that were built almost like NBA teams, where you go, we needed these role players, we need these shooters, we need these guys. And it seems like a lot of programs, at least the teams that can, are star hunting, and it has not led to, let's just think about Kentucky, John Calipari. Like, this is the reverse of that. And it's sort of like, well, why isn't every team in college basketball outside of like 10 doing it this way?
Peter, one and done has been dead for years now. It's not just now that John Calipari is leaving tail between his legs, by the way, to run to Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Like, this has been a long time coming. And it's like John Calipari refuses to accept the reality of it. When, like this year, he finally accepted 3-point shooting as like a viable strategy. And they became the number 1 3-point shooting team by percentage in the nation. And then he touts it as like some revolutionary thing that he figured out. And I'm like, Coach Cal, you're not a great X's and O's coach, and you've just now figured this out. Consequently, he's going to come live for me and make Tyson food money, right? Like, that's what we're talking about here.
Keep up with college basketball all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On College Basketball on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube.